On April 8th, 2026, a burner account posted a link to a Google document containing over 300 pages of allegations against the Roblox developer Zeal, the creator and owner of the Roblox game known as Pressure. One of the primary authors of the document was the former music composer of Pressure, Ren, and had alleged that she had been sexually assaulted by Zeal during an encounter that took place several months earlier at RDC 2025, a popular Roblox conference that takes place every year in San Jose, California. The document contains screenshots, Ren's own testimonies of the events that transpired, and additional allegations regarding Zeal's behavior both before and after the events of RDC. While the document was mainly focused on Zeal, there were callouts to other Pressure developers who had supposedly known about the assault beforehand, but chose to stay silent in order to quote-unquote protect the cash cow. With allegations being this serious and the internet being the internet, it was only a matter of time before it started a wildfire. Moderators, developers, voice actors, and anyone who was affiliated with Pressure were quick to show their support for Ren, despite the chaos that was currently consuming the game. And consuming it did. Within the first 24 hours of the allegations, a majority of the developers and popular figures within the community were all walking away from the project, and someone even went out of their way to leak the entire Pressure asset folder. The community quite literally burned the entire game to the ground before Zeal even had a chance to respond. But a response eventually did come, but not one we would have expected. A suicide note from Zeal. The 1 hour and 30-minute video titled "I Have Killed Myself" was uploaded on Zeal's YouTube channel 2 days after the initial Ren document was posted, and was quickly taken down off of YouTube, but was quickly re-uploaded on several different channels across the platform. The reaction that followed was not one that was met with concern. It was met with mockery, insults, literal song remixes of him crying during the video, and so much worse. For the next couple of hours after the video released, it was uncertain whether Zeal's attempt had failed or succeeded, and it was only when Zeal's mother made an announcement in the Pressure Discord saying that Zeal was alive, but he was hospitalized. We were promised a response to the allegations, along with a pursuit and legal action against Ren for defamation, and so we had to wait. It wasn't until a couple days later when an anonymous user uploaded a document titled "Additional Info" that was omitted in Ren's document, and inside were numerous screenshots, messages, and claims that challenged portions of the original narrative that would mark the beginning of a new phase in the controversy. Now, believe it or not, we're actually in the middle of the story right now, and in order to fully understand Zeal's response, we have to go back to long before even RDC took place. We have to go back to January 2025. There weren't any issues around this point in the timeline, but here is where an important friendship was formed. Not between Ren and Zeal, but rather between Ren and a moderator who worked on Pressure named Kat. Because they were both involved in the project and spent time in the same circles, the two grew close over the months as they played games together, watched anime, and spoke frequently outside of their work on Pressure. According to Kat in her own document, she also assisted Ren with more serious stuff, including legal advice and even helping her with music distribution. Now, I know this doesn't seem significant right now, but Kat would later become a very important figure in the story, as she was present not only during RDC, but would play a major role in Ren's falling out with the development team of Pressure. It's not until March of 25 when we first start seeing the initial batch of issues that Ren started having with the development team, when randomly, one day, Ren disappeared. For 2 weeks, multiple members of the Pressure team and individuals close to her couldn't get in contact with her at all, and concerns only began to grow. Kat, having access to her email via iMessage, decided to reach out in hopes of getting a response, and, well, a response she got, but a very different one than she was expecting. The next morning, she woke up to more than 186 messages from Ren, many of which were insults, keyboard smashes, and surprisingly to everyone, including Kat, a love confession from Ren. Kat herself even stated that she didn't see the signs prior, and after telling Ren she had feelings for someone else, Ren blocked her as she couldn't even be within the same space as her. It got so bad that even when a new pressure development server was created, Ren refused to join the server due to Kat's affiliation inside, which led her to only communicating with Zeal regarding anything involving the game. There was attempts to try and mend the friendship, but the damage had already been done at this point, and while they would eventually have a falling out in July, a conversation in May given to us by Kat shows Ren expressing her concern for working on pressure and wanting to leave the project. Which brings us to our next spot in the timeline, Ren's departure from pressure. In a document published by Will, someone on the storyboard team and was also present at RDC, the events leading up to Ren's departure centered around an incident involving leaking music for an upcoming update. While in a stage inside of the pressure server, Ren was live streaming unreleased music to a small group of people, and once Zeal had caught wind of this, joined the stage where he yelled at Ren for leaking confidential material, something she had apparently done multiple times before. A day later, Ren posted on her Blue Sky account that she was going to be leaving pressure as it was the best thing to do for her mental health, and so it marked the end of an era. Taking a quick timeout pause to throw in some needed context to talk about Ren and Zeal's relationship at this point, because it's important to know that they weren't just co-workers and had been friends for almost 5 years. Not only that, but a conversation shown a few weeks before her departure from the game revealed that she had feelings for Zeal at an unknown time in their friendship. It's something that can be easily lost in the sea of evidence, so just want to make sure it's at least being talked about because a lot of people don't know that. They ended up cutting communication with one another in June of 25, and it's not until August where they reconnect again, which brings us into the next important event. For the sake of the length of this video, I'm not going to go over every single one of the messages that was exchanged between the two, as we'd be here all day, so I'm going to be hitting the important parts of this spot in the timeline, because there's a lot. It was Ren who first reached back out to Zeal by sending a picture of her nails and then requesting to want to hang out with him sometime. Zeal invited Ren to a pressure dev server, but had to tell them not to join due to it being an employee-only Discord server. And because Ren wasn't on the team, along with animosity between some of the other team members, she wasn't allowed to join. Zeal would later ask if Ren would be attending RDC, to which she replied yes, and that they should meet up. In the same conversation, Ren once again asks to meet up with Zeal, to which the both of them plan a day that they can see one another. Zeal asks if he can pick up Ren, to which Ren gives consent and says she likes doing that. This happens multiple times. There's also this back and forth exchange of bunny pictures and videos, which one of the other authors of the document, J-Bug, claims it to be sexual framing, but I don't know, bro, you tell me. This continues throughout the remainder of August, which brings us to where everything allegedly happens. RDC 2025. On September 2nd of that year, Ren and Zeal officially meet up with one another alongside some of Ren's friends. Both Zeal and Ren's testimonies confirm that Zeal greeted Ren by picking her up and hugging her, as opposed to something like a handshake. For the sake of keeping things true and honest for this timeline, anytime there's a differing testimony, I will show both, but mainly emphasize the ones that are corroborated by others that were present. And if you don't know what corroborated means, it means lines up. Get a dictionary. There's going to be a lot of times this happens, so I will do my best to not make it confusing, so just gotta stick with me. There was an awkward interaction in the suite of the hotel room according to Ren, but there isn't any additional testimony to back either claim up, so for this instance, it's up to interpretation. Flash forward to September 3rd, Zeal and Ren once again meet back up alongside more of her friends in the lobby of a hotel. Those friends ended up needing something that was left behind in their room and had to step away for a minute, leaving Zeal and Ren alone to themselves in the lobby. What transpired was a rough conversation involving another game project and the feelings of the pressure dev team, which caused Ren to start crying in the hotel lobby. Once again, differing testimonies on what happened, but it wasn't until the friends came back from the hotel room that things calmed down. The rest of the day continues to go by, and it's not until later when Ren tells Zeal that she is an emotional mess, to which Zeal asks if it's okay to come over, which leads us to the alleged assault. I've said this once and I'll say it again, but I personally was not in the room when it happened. only Ren and Zeal were. Both of their testimonies are completely different from one another and both tell a much different story. So for that reason, I will go over what we know for sure happened in that room. While there is evidence that supports both sides of the story, I think what's important here is that at least from this point in the timeline, who has been telling the story consistently and honestly. I mean this in the most neutral way possible, but Ren lied and omitted a lot of information before and after we've got to this point. Just so that you're all aware, it is proven by fact that she has left out important details that would explain certain behavior from Zeal, and also exclude certain parts in her document that show her cooperating with the same behavior that she criticizes. I'll still be using her testimony as it isn't all lies, but not telling 100% of the truth is still a lie of omission. So with that being said, I'll go over what we know for certain happened in the room that night. Ren was an emotional mess when Zeal arrived, where he comforted Ren for about an hour. A sexual encounter did happen and was initiated by Ren via a kiss. Things moved fast, and it was clear that both of them were very inexperienced with what they were doing, as it was both of their first times. Zeal acted on Ren's pace and moved and stopped when Ren told him to. Ren claimed to have a good time via a voice message left after the fact. I will play it right now.
Okay, listen, it's fine. I don't want you to feel bad about it. You genuinely made my day. Like, genuinely. Listen, I'm really happy right now. Like, please don't feel bad in the slightest, okay?
And finally, and most importantly, Zeal asked for the encounter to be kept private. The events that followed were an exchange of text messages where Ren was reassuring Zeal about his performance and that she had a good time. It's a day later on September 4th where the two continue to talk about the encounter, where Zeal suggests that the two should try again. Despite showing otherwise in her document, it's been proven that both were mutually planning a second encounter in hopes of getting able to try and have. And while this is an important event that can be overshadowed without evidence, another thing that I want to touch base on is Ren telling her friends about their encounter. For the sake of keeping these people's identities private, I'll be referring to them as Blue and Green, as they've requested for privacy, and I wish to honor their request for privacy. Their testimonies come from a very important document that predates even Ren's original document from April 8th, and I know it's a little confusing on how I have this document, but for the sake of the timeline, it matches up. I promise I'll explain later in the video. Blue states in their testimony that the day they flew in, Ren and them went and met up for lunch, where Ren had talked about everything that had happened so far, including the encounter that they had with Zeal. Now, remember a couple minutes ago when I said there were a few things that we know for sure happened in the room that night, including Zeal wanting to keep the encounter to stay private? I guess that was short-lived. It even happened again later in the day when, according to Green, while Ren and them were waiting outside of an arcade for other people to arrive, Ren started talking about the encounter from the previous night in explicit detail, which made Green really uncomfortable. What's interesting is we can even verify this being true, as messages from the same day show Ren was really stuck waiting at an arcade around with a friend at the time, and matches up whenever them and Green would have had this conversation. So at the very least, the timeline matches up. Now, let me emphasize that this doesn't prove or disprove anything by itself. If anything, it's a they said, she said thing, but it does show that Ren was talking to multiple people at the time about the encounter shortly after it happened, which is important because this comes up at a very important part later in the story. Flash forward to later that night, the two ended up deciding to move it to the next day as it works out better for the both of them. And so we get into the next part of the timeline, the second encounter. Unlike the first encounter, both Ren and Zeal were both mutually planning to have a encounter. This detail is important because Ren would later state in her document that the second encounter was more forced onto her than planned, but additional context shown in Zeal's document show both Ren and Zeal discussing and arranging the meetup beforehand. In the later Twitter DMs released by Zeal in his document, we can also see the further context of what happened in the room that night, and according to Ren, Zeal attempted nothing uncomfortable. For now though, the important takeaway is that the second encounter was planned by both Ren and Zeal, but was also the night Zeal learned about whom Ren had told about the first encounter. According to Zeal's account in his document, it was during the second encounter when he learned Ren had been telling other people about what had happened, and at this point in the story, he knew there were 2 people who had been told. If that's true, then Blue and Green's testimony line up with Zeal's version of events. And with that being said, we can finally move that out of the way and move on into our next time and place, which is RDC Day 2. Taking a quick step away from the Zeal focus side of things, we have to look at someone else who was also present at RDC at the time, that being the person I'd mentioned earlier in the timeline, Kat. At this point in the timeline, Ren and Kat were no longer friends. The relationship had fallen apart months ago, and according to Kat's document, she had already told one of Ren's friends 2 days before that she did not want to be around Ren. This plays into a lot of the discourse that Ren had in the hotel lobby on September 3rd, and it's an important detail I'm throwing in for a very important reason. I promise this is relevant. Despite all the barriers that had already been set up, Kat states that Ren approached her despite all this. Now, by itself, this might not seem like a huge deal, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because it establishes a pattern that several people would later point out throughout this entire situation: Ren breaking boundaries. We saw it after the first encounter, and we see it here again. And sadly, this wouldn't be the last time it happened. Later that same day, before the Roblox Innovation Awards, Ren was sitting at a dinner table with Blue, Green, and 3 other Roblox developers. According to Green, Ren once again brought up the encounter and made jokes about it at the table, which made even one of the developers uncomfortable. As a result, even more people became aware of what happened between Ren and Zeal, and it wasn't long until it spiraled into Ren's attempt. At the Innovation Awards, Zeal is told by someone that Ren had been going behind his back and telling other people about the encounters they had in the previous nights. Frustrated and angry that Ren had broken a boundary that he had placed, he confronted Ren over Discord about telling other people about their encounters. It should be important to note that this part is completely absent from Ren's document. While Ren's testimony talks about the event, it doesn't go into why it happened, only that Zeal had engineered the situation to weaponize her BPD. We know that from multiple other documents and testimonies that this was prompted by Ren telling other people about the encounter. The reason we don't see this explanation in her document is because it goes against her narrative of keeping it a secret because the encounters were quote-unquote sexual assault. She ends up leaving the award show and demands that Zeal tell her who told him so that she can beat them up and basically assault them. Zeal would eventually stop responding to the messages and start creating space to distance themselves after Ren broke the boundary. What transpired over the next hour was a lot of failed calls, attempts at trying to reach out to Ren. Will ended up calling the police, and thankfully people were able to find Ren before she was able to do anything, and would ultimately be the reason why Ren ended up getting banned from RDC. It was about a week later after RDC when Zeal had found out about Ren's attempt on her life and promptly reached back out to her. They kept in contact throughout most of September and even go into some of the detail that transpired in the bedroom at RDC. It wasn't until September 17th where Ren and Zeal exchanged spicy Twitter accounts where they go into even more detail about the encounters and also sext each other, and where now we can identify all these Twitter DMs coming from. It was only 2 days later after exchanging the Twitter accounts where Zeal found out about Ren's mistreatment of the other pressure team members who were present at RDC. He was made aware about how Kat was approached by Ren even after making it painfully clear that she didn't want to be around her. That's also not including all the mean and disrespectful things she was saying behind the backs of others that were present at RDC, and the worst of it was she allegedly tried to get another pressure dev who was an ex-alcoholic drunk. This is when Zeal started to distance themselves from Ren and eventually cut contact with their Twitter accounts on September 25th. By employing the gray rocking method by just gradually making somebody lose interest over time, he was afraid that Ren would attempt to harm herself had he just abruptly ended the friendship right then and there. Which takes us to the day they finally stopped talking to one another. It started as a heated conversation that mostly involved Ren voicing her frustrations about Zeal and his unfair standards with her despite her feelings to want to pursue a relationship with him. They ended up cutting contact with one another after it was clear that Zeal didn't want to put any effort for the friendship, and just like that, they were out of each other's lives. And you're probably thinking that this is the moment where we jump back to Zeal's response, but we need to look at one more important detail in the timeline. When the narrative shifted. On November 27th, Ren planned on exposing Pressure. One of Ren's friends ended up reaching out to Zeal to inform him that she was planning on writing an expose document on Zeal. While it does sound like it lines up with the 6-month time frame that took Ren to write this document, what if I told you it was never about sexual assault, but rather how Zeal treated her on Pressure in the weeks following the sexual encounter? Despite this though, and after learning that Zeal had found out about this, she decided against writing the document as it was against her nature, and told him to never treat another woman like that ever again. Until it all changed in December, where Ren had claimed that Zeal had sexually assaulted her. April 16th, 2026, Zeal releases his counter-document to the world. People at this point had already begun pointing out the holes inside of Ren's document, and this really only made them stand out even worse. People even went to go and ask Ren about these inconsistencies, but were met with silence for an answer. She eventually came out and said she was working on a revision document to better streamline the information and what many people assumed to clear up some of these holes that were present. And then radio silence. For about a month. We eventually got an answer on the progress of the revision document during a hosted live stream between me and GamerChicken1234. A burner account messaged me a series of DMs between Kat and Ren about the progress of the document. Unknown to everybody at the time, but Kat was apparently working alongside Ren to help publish this new and improved document. While it was unconfirmed for a little bit if this information was even true, it eventually was proven to be so, with a video showing that this was in fact Kat and that the document was no longer being worked on. Ren was quick to make a statement that the document was in fact still being worked on and that there was a miscommunication between the two of them, which is what led to Kat thinking that the document wasn't being worked on. I know that's a little confusing, but the important part of this is that the burner account that I got in contact with is actually how I ended up getting my hands on the unredacted Zeal document. And suddenly, just like that, all the puzzle pieces started falling into place. The testimonies from Blue and Green, Kat's statement, Will's statement, the timeline of RDC, Ren's statement, both of Zeal's documents, the additional screenshots that have been circulating for months. For the first time, I had enough information to start connecting all of these seemingly separate events together into a single timeline. At that point, there was really only one thing left that I needed: the revised Ren document. The document that was supposed to address the criticisms, provide additional evidence, clarify inconsistencies, and give Ren's updated version of events the benefit of hindsight. I had everything else. I was just waiting for the final piece. And then it got canceled. So yeah, that's the entire timeline that has led everything up to now, and it looks like things are heading to court, but you know, when we get there, we'll get there. Please know that it is not easy to sum up like 15 hours worth of content across multiple different documents into one concise video. I'm bound to miss a detail. I will say right now, and I've been saying this since the beginning, the best way to fully understand the situation is reading all the documents. I put links to all the sources that I used in the description below. I know it's a lot of documents, but like I said, this is a combined total of everything that I have read and everything that I've digested so far. So yeah, I'm tired. It's like 3 in the morning. I want to go to bed. Thank you for watching. If you like my content, and I don't know, if you want to subscribe and be nice, I'm all here for it. So I want to go to sleep. So yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Or tomorrow. Wait, what? No, I'll see you guys later. Guys, I'm fucking tired. I'll see you guys later. See ya.